Let's read through our liturgy real quick. I'm going to read through this. I'm not going to belabor the point. I'm going to just tell you what I'm going to read, and I'm not going to tell you why. I'm going to read Deuteronomy 34, verse 10, 11, and 12, both in the English and in the Hebrew. Then I'm going to jump over to Genesis 1 and read verse 1, 2, and 3 in the English and in the Hebrew. And if you don't know why, go back and listen to last week's commentary, 2 weeks ago, and you'll find out why I'm reading it this way. But let me just read it here. Deuteronomy 34, verse 10. And there is not arisen a prophet since in Israel like Moses, whom the Lord knew face to face. Verse 11. None like him for all the signs and wonders that the Lord sent him to do in the land of Egypt, to Pharaoh and to all his household, to all his servants and to all his land. And verse 12, and for all the mighty power and all the great deeds of terror that Moses did in the sight of Israel. Here's the Hebrew over on the right side of the page, verse 10. V'lo kam navi'od b'Yisrael k'Moshe, asher yida'u Adonai panim el panim. Verse 11. L'chol ha'otot hamuftim, asher shlacho Adonai la'asot be'eretz Mitzrayim lefaro l'chol arzo, l'chol avodaiv l'chol arzo. Verse 12. Ulchol hayad hachazaka, ulchol hamorah hagadol asher asa Moshe le'enei kol Yisrael. Genesis 1, verse 1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Verse 2. The earth was without form and void, and darkness was over the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters. Verse 3. And God said, let there be light, and there was light. The Hebrew, verse 1. Brishit bara Elohim et hashamayim ve'et ha'aretz. Verse 2. V'ha'aretz haita tohu v'vohu v'choshek al panei tehom, v'ruach Elohim merachefet al panei hamayim. And verse 3. Vayomer Elohim yehi or vayehi or. And there's one more passage that I actually do want to read. This will be the Greek reading for our Hebrew and Greek liturgy. Ephesians 2, 14, 15, and 16. And we're reading this because it was connected to our Roman study a few weeks ago, where we were talking about what makes for mutual peace and mutual building, like Paul challenges us in Romans 14:19. And we answered the question in our Roman study that what makes for peace and mutual building is the idea that we're joined together in Messiah with a common faith in Messiah and filled with His Holy Spirit. And it doesn't matter whether we're Jew or Gentile. We're both part of the same family of God, the family of Messiah, the family of Abraham, sons and daughters of Abraham, body of Messiah, however you want to describe it. Here's what Paul says in Ephesians 2:14. Speaking of Yeshua, for He Himself is our peace. He has made us both, right, us is the Jew and Gentile, He's made us both one and has broken down in His flesh the dividing wall of hostility, which, he says in verse 15, He does by abolishing the law of commandments expressed in ordinances, that He might create in Himself one new man in place of the two, so making peace. Did Paul just tell us that Jesus did away with the law to bring Jew and Gentile together? Nope, that's not what he said. By context, what Paul is saying is that he did away with our social class caste system, which separated us as Jews and Gentiles, and was strengthened by our own particular community bylaws and group laws, otherwise known as halakha. In other words, the oral Torah and traditions of Paul's day that separated Jews from Gentiles and made a distinction of who was a genuine child of God. Jesus came and wiped through all that. He blew through all that. He just broke down all those walls of separation that were built up by man. It was not built up by the Torah. It was built up by man's misuse of Torah and man's perversion of Torah. But Jesus came and cut through all of that nonsense. It's not the Torah that was nonsense. It's not the Torah that needed to be broken down by Messiah. It was the law of commandments expressed in dogma, expressed in ordinances, not the actual commandments themselves. Verse 16, that He might reconcile us both to God in one body through the cross, thereby killing the hostility. The Greek says, starting verse 14, Autas gar esten he ereinen humon ha poesas ta amphotera. hen kai ta mestotoikon tu fragmu lusas tein ekthron. Verse 15, en te sarkiau tu ton namonton en talon en dogmas en katergesas hina tus duokatise in auto es hena kainon anthropon poion erenin. And verse 16, kai apokatalaxe, that's a tongue twister, tus amphoteros in heni somatito theodia tu stauru apoktenas, it's another tongue twister, tain ekthron in auto. And that'll do it for our liturgy for tonight.